Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Amanda Waddell, and I'm the training manager here at BVR. Our webinar today is Learning RADA, Leveraging BVR's AI Capabilities with Adam Manson and Steve Bruner. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that your attendance today is eligible for 1 CPE credit. To receive the credit, you must answer 3 questions that will appear during this webinar, and you must complete and submit a brief survey within 5 business days. At the conclusion of today's program, you'll automatically be directed to that survey. You can also find a link to the survey in your login email. If you're registered as an additional listener, you must be on your own device so that you can respond to the questions and qualify for CPE. If you have any trouble with the audio or the polls, please first try refreshing your screen. We'll take all questions for our presenters using the Q&A chat function on the side of your screen. Again, to receive CE credit, you must answer 3 poll questions during this webinar. Now it's my pleasure to introduce today's speakers. Adam Manson is the Chief Product Officer here at BVR, where he manages the various financial data products, analytics, and tools BVR offers. He has led the development of various platforms and tools, including DealStats, the Guideline Public Company Comps tool, and the Economic Outlook Update, among others. Steve Bruner offers over 25 years of tax and accounting experience and leads the business valuation and mergers and acquisitions practice at Lisk and Bruner CPAs. He serves as an advisor to his clients as both a tax professional and fractional CFO. As a business valuation and litigation support expert, Steve has valued over 200 businesses covering such areas as family law matters, business damages, buy-sell agreements, shareholder litigation, estate and gift tax matters, and buying and selling businesses. He's testified as an expert in Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana courts. In addition, Steve offers advanced expertise as a certified valuation analyst, master analyst in financial forensics, and a certified mergers and acquisitions advisor. Our speakers' full bios can also be found on the webinar presentation page as well. I'll turn this over to you both. Have a great webinar.
Well, thank you very much, Amanda, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. Today, Steve and I are going to talk about BVR's RADA. We're going to walk through some demos of using RADA so you can see how it can be a benefit to your work. First, we're going to begin by talking about surveys that we've run about AI usage in the BV profession. We're going to share some key points from our most recent perspectives paper from our Leadership Council. And then we'll finish by talking about what's in the pipeline here at BVR in terms of our development work. So between October 2025 and March of this year, we've conducted 11 polls of valuation professionals asking about their AI usage. And in our most recent surveys, we found that the vast majority of BV professionals are using AI tools in their work. Our most recent survey found that almost 80% said, yes, we are using AI tools in our practice. When we asked them how frequently are they using these tools, over a third, so 35%, said they use AI daily at their firm. Another 31% said they use these tools 1 or a few times a week. So essentially, the BV profession, 2/3 say they're using AI tools 1 or multiple times a week, and very few say they're specifically trying to limit their usage. In our most recent survey, only 10% said they're trying to rein in their firm's usage of AI. And across our various surveys, the results in terms of what are the most commonly used models has been consistent. It's always been ChatGPT followed by Copilot. And when we asked the market, are you going to change your fees based on your firm's adoption of these AI tools? Just about 70% said no, we're not going to change the fees that we charge our clients. And some actually said they might actually decrease their fees. And across these polls, we asked practitioners what they're using AI for in their BV practice. And the most common response was for industry research. This was followed by summarizing documents. The 2 least cited responses were data analysis and reviewing calculations. We continue to ask practitioners what they're using AI tools for. So we'll continue to monitor this and see if any of the use cases change. But across our last 11 surveys, these are the rank ordered responses that BV professionals said they're using AI for. So BVR's Leadership Council released their most recent perspectives paper in September of last year. They're actually working on a second paper now on AI, which is a follow-up to their first paper on AI. And we'll publish this as soon as it is available. But if you want to read the most recently available perspectives paper, you can find this on our website. If you navigate to bvresources.com, you can scroll down to the bottom of our site and click on free resources to find this paper. But some key highlights from the Leadership Council's paper are here. They find that yes, BV tools are reshaping the work that professionals do, but it's not taking the place of human judgment. They did stress that data quality is crucial, so using a model with poor data will lead to poor results. They also noted that it's important to be transparent with your clients when you use AI, where you use AI, and any potential limitations to that. And again, due diligence is always important when selecting an actual model to use, as well as vetting and reviewing the responses that you've got from the model that you are using. So at the end of the day, they acknowledge that yes, AI is something that is going to enhance the work that BV professionals do, but it's not going to be a substitute for professional judgment that appraisers bring to the table. So let's talk about RADA. So what is RADA? So RADA is an acronym for Research and Data Assistant. It's a tool here at BVR that answers your questions and provides you with responses. You can currently interact with RADA in DealStats, in BVResearch Pro, and across our PDFs. So RADA can do a variety of things. In DealStats, it has access to our companion guide. It has access to our FAQ page. It has access to the underlying DealStats data table. So you can ask RADA questions about data in the DealStats platform. You can ask RADA methodology related questions. So if you have a question about how BVR captures data, how we report data, you can interact with RADA and get those answers. You can use RADA and DealStats to produce custom data tables. You can use RADA to produce custom graphs. You can download these graphs and these tables after they're produced. And if there's any sort of statistics that you want to see in DealStats, based on the data that we have, but maybe it's not a statistic that we publish under our statistics table, you can ask RADA to produce this for you, and RADA can do so. So it can give you a lot of great functionality in addition to what you get when you search the platform. And RADA also resides across the PDFs here at BVR. So if you have access to any of our quarterly newsletters, any of our publications, so our ebooks, our e-guides, any of our reports, you can interact with RADA in these reports. It will pull content, it will query the information in those reports and provide you with an answer. So it's a great way to interact with any of these books, guides, and reports to learn more about the content, which it can direct you to the sections that it relied on in providing you with those answers. And RADA also resides in BVResearch Pro, and Steve later is going to walk through how he uses RADA in BVResearch Pro for his work. But if you're familiar with BVResearch Pro, you know it's a great resource. If you're not familiar with BVResearch Pro, it is our library of BV content and intelligence. It includes articles, it includes papers, digital books, digital guides. It includes webinar transcripts, court case digests, and RADA can pull from all of this intelligence, all of this content to formulate answers for you when you run prompts and queries. It'll cite the sources that it used. It'll provide direct links to those underlying sources if you want to capture and document those. But it's a great way to search and get answers across a wide breadth of intelligence that BVR provides. And if you want to have a version of RADA that you can install on your home system, you can do so. Here's a way, here's some steps that you can do this if you're using Chrome as your browser. You can visit this URL here. And I know you have access to these slides, I think the PowerPoint format as well. So if you want to try this later, please do so. But you can go visit this URL in Chrome. If you click the three dots at the top right corner of your browser, you'll see an option that is Cast, Save, and Share. If you select that, you can choose to install the page as an app, and you have the option of renaming it. So this will allow a version of RADA to be installed on your system. You can have a quick launch icon, a desktop shortcut. You can run it directly from your system and sort of bypass the various steps to go into RADA. And a benefit of doing this is that it's a quick way to launch it when you begin your work. If you want to open it at the start of the day or when you're going through your engagement, you can have it as a tool and a companion for you to run prompts, get answers, and just get general information as you go about your BV work. So a quick way to bring it up and utilize it throughout the day. So I'm sure, at least based on our surveys, mostly everyone here is familiar with using some AI model, whether it's ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude or something else. So you know that the more specific you are when you're writing prompts, the more clearly written the prompt is, the better the answer you'll get. The same is true with RADA. So writing clear, specific prompts is really crucial and benefits the answers and responses that you'll receive. Additionally, if you have any sort of like format you're looking for the information in, are you looking for bullets? Are you looking for 2 paragraphs? Are you looking for content or data over a certain time period? Do you want a graph or a table? It's important to specify that to get the information in the format that you're looking for. And when RADA provides you with a response, you can follow up, you can ask clarifying questions, you can ask RADA to provide you with an illustration of what it is talking about. If you want RADA to elaborate on something, you can ask that. So you can have that kind of ongoing conversation and kind of flesh out any sort of questions you have based on RADA's responses. And like the other AI models you use, you know it's important to go ahead and check the sources that are used and verify those to make sure that you're relying on good, accurate information. It's important to do so with RADA. And RADA will provide you with the sources that it used in coming up with your answer. If you're within a document, it'll provide you with the page numbers that it used. It'll provide direct links to those pages. If you're using DealStats and you're looking at data, you'll have access to the logic that it used, the SQL query that it ran. You can audit, review these. You can save them for your documentation purposes. So always good to check on that, but RADA is always going to provide you with that information. So you have that to go ahead and review and vet any responses that RADA provides. All right, so now we're going to go look at using RADA in DealStats firstly. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right. Well, I hope everyone can see my screen. So we're going to take a look at using RADA and some examples of some prompts and queries that we can run using RADA. So right now we see RADA here in the bottom right corner of our screen. It's this little kind of orange icon. RADA is going to be moving up here to the top of DealStats, but right now it's down here toward the bottom. All right, so what we can do is we can go ahead and click on RADA. We can resize the window if we would like to see a larger viewing pane. And we're going to start by asking a question about DealStats data capture methodology. So here we'll start by asking, do asset sales include inventory? So here RADA responds. It says yes, it typically does include inventory. It goes through, it provides some kind of bulleted information. And then it also notes here at the end that it is not included in the pure play MBIC. All right, so we can follow up, with a question to RADA and ask what the pure play MBIC is. One thing I'd like to note quickly here is you have this option to copy. So this will copy both your prompt and the response from RADA. So if you want to paste this into a Word document or some other place, this is how you could do so.
All right. Adam, I'm not seeing your demo. I'm not sure if the participants are.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Amanda, Natasha, can you verify?
No, I can't. We can't see it either. You might just have to refresh.
Okay. I'll stop sharing and try.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm sorry about that. And thank you for letting me know, Steve. All right. All right, so it shows me as sharing now. Can you see my screen?
You can see the economic outlook update. Yep.
Oh, I see. Let me go ahead and do this then. I'll just share my entire screen.
There we go.
Okay, you can see this now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
You're good.
I guess it was just sharing out one of my other tabs, not the whole browser here. So here we asked RADA a methodology-based question about how DealStats captures and reports information in terms of what is included in the selling price. And we asked, do asset sales include inventory? RADA goes through, provides us with a response. It says, yes, it typically does. It gives us some other information, but also notes it is not included in the pure play MBIC price. And we can ask RADA a follow-up question to elaborate on what exactly is the pure play price. First, I want to quickly note that we have this option to copy this information out of RADA. So we can click on this option here. It'll copy our prompt, it'll copy our response, and we can paste this into Word or some other document. So here we'll run a follow-up query to RADA, a follow-up prompt. We'll ask, what is the pure play MVIC price? All right, so RADA goes through, it cites the companion guide, it answers our question that the pure play MVIC price is a reconstructed selling price that only includes the value of the target's fixed assets and intangibles, but it also looks at and provides the logic that we use to create the pure play MVIC based on different transaction types and different scenarios. Okay, so let's take a look at asking RADA another question. So let's ask RADA to create a data table for us. So here we're going to ask RADA to provide us with a data table that contains the median SDE multiple for private targets in SIC 1711 by year for the years 2006 through 2025. All right, so we can either hit enter or we can click the button over here to enter our prompts. We'll let RADA think about this for a minute as it goes through the data table. Okay, a lot of information here, so I'm going to scroll back up. All right, so we have our question here. We're looking for a table of median SDE multiples for HVAC firms by year for the time period that we specified. We can see that RADA has produced this for us. So we have two columns. We have the year, we have the median SDE multiple. We can scroll down. It provided us this information for our requested 2006 through 2025 time period. And then over here on the right, we have the option to download this data table. So if we want to download this data table to CSV, we just click on this icon here, and this will be able to, and this will download for us. So whenever RADA provides us with calculations and it looks at the data table in DealStats, it's going to go through and give us some details and an explanation of what it looked at. So here, we had specified SIC 1711, which it identifies as, HVAC contractors. We can see it looked at the target SIC1 field. It looked at target type equals private, right? Because we specified private targets. It looked at the sale date because we looked for transactions between 2006 and 2025. So here we can review and audit what RADA looked at and what it did to produce that data table. If we scroll down below the details and explanation, we can actually look at the detailed SQL query that RADA ran to produce that table for us. So that is this right here. And then RADA will end with providing some footnotes and just to clarify on any outstanding items that it thinks it may need to sort of highlight or elaborate on. So we have this data from DealStats that it produced for us in table format. We can download it. But what if we want to transform this data table into a graph for us? So let's go ahead and ask RADA to turn this into a line graph. All right, so we enter our prompt and we hit the enter button over here. And we can see that RADA has taken these median SDE multiples and has now plotted them on a line graph for us. We can see we can hover over each of the years. We can look at the multiple for that year. And we have an icon here where if we want to download this graph, we can. So we can just click on this to go ahead and download the graph. And what if we want to modify the graph? What if we want to add to the graph? All right, let's ask RADA one more request here. Let's ask RADA to add the median net sales multiples for these transactions. So for these HVAC firms, these private targets, let's also add the net sales multiple to this graph. So we go ahead and run our prompt, and we go ahead and hit enter. So RADA will start thinking, it will start processing our request, recreating that graph. All right, so now we now have our graph. We still have the median SDE multiples, but now we also have, for these same private targets, the median net sales multiple. We can ask RADA to modify this graph to however we wish. We can have it change the title, any of the labeling, the time periods. Let's provide an example of modifying this. We see that the net sales multiples are generally substantially lower than the SDE multiples. What if we want to plot the net sales multiples on the second vertical axis and move them off that primary vertical axis? We can go ahead and make this request to RADA. You see RADA is going through, reproducing our graph. All right, we now have our net sales multiples plotted on our secondary vertical axis. Again, we can download this if we wish. So let's take a look at producing a custom calculation in RADA. So let's ask RADA to calculate the average value of goodwill as a percentage of the MVIC price for private targets in SIC 8711. So we collect purchase price allocations, so we have goodwill values, we have selling prices, but for these engineering firms, if we want to know on average, how much of the selling price is represented by goodwill, we don't produce that calculation in DealStats, it's not in the statistics table. We can ask RADA to go ahead and run this for us. Okay, so RADA begins by giving us an answer. It tells us the average value of goodwill as a percentage of the selling price for engineering firms is about 57%. It then provides us with an explanation of what it looked at to go ahead and create this custom calculation for us. And like we saw when we produced our data table, in addition to getting details and explanations, RADA also goes through and provides us with the SQL query that it ran, as well as any sort of footnotes that it needs to kind of clarify what exactly it did as it produced this information for us. All right, and I know that we didn't see this at the start because I was sharing a different browser tab, but RADA is currently located down here in the bottom right corner of the DealStats platform. If you click on it, it will expand. You can run your prompts and questions. And just to note, RADA is going to be moving up here, so it'll be a bit more prominent and closer to some other buttons that we use in our workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick walkthrough of using RADA in some of our PDFs. So I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen share over. So you should be looking at the Economic Outlook update now. It looks like you are. Perfect. So RADA is available where we have PDF downloads. So with our reports, our books, our guides, any of those digital publications, where you have a download option, there's also a launch RADA option. When you launch RADA, it will go ahead and pull up a reader view of that digital publication, and it will pull up a pane over to the right, which is a way to interact with RADA, or sorry, a way to interact with the publication. And you'll first notice, oh, let me Sorry, it opened a new window. Sorry, let me switch my screen share. Okay. All right, so it'll open up that PDF as a viewer. It'll open up this pane over to the right, which is RADA and how we can interact with this PDF. And RADA will begin by providing some sample prompts that you can run. You can type anything you want to query down here into this box, and you can hit search, or you can select some of these suggested options from RADA. Let's go ahead and select one of these, suggested prompts. Let's select what challenges are small businesses facing in the current economic climate. And again, this is looking solely at the March 2026 economic outlook update. It's not going outside. It's not using external content. It's only querying this publication. And this would be true for any sort of PDF that you're using RADA with to interact with. Okay. So RADA lists answers to our question, which was, what challenges are small businesses facing in the current economic climate? It's using solely this one resource. And we can see here, we have numbered items, inflation concerns, revenue issues, but we also have these numbers next to our responses. So we see here, this is number 12. This means RADA use information and content and use the content from page 12. If we want to go through and verify this, we can click on that 12. It'll take us to page 12 where we see the small business optimism section. And this is the information that RADA used to provide us with this response. If we want to review or audit anything that RADA stated, we can do so by reading this information here. As an example, let's ask RADA one more question. Let's ask RADA, what consumer confidence and small business optimism trends appear in the latest data? And again, this is exclusively from the March 2026 Economic Outlook Update. So we see we have RADA down here. The spinning wheel RADA's thinking is providing us with an answer. All right. So RADA provides us with some key responses based on consumer confidence and small business optimism, some trends that it has identified. And again, we have the page numbers that it utilized. So here for consumer confidence and the trends that it's sharing with us, it sourced this information from page 10. Again, we can click on page 10. We can jump to the consumer confidence section that RADA read, analyzed, and synthesized for us to review anything that RADA has provided. And again, you can do this across any of the PDFs available at BVR, as well as in BVResearch Pro, where it queries across all of our content that we have in that library. And that brings us to Steve, who's going to walk us through how he and his firm use BVResearch Pro and RADA specifically in BVResearch Pro. So I will stop my screen share and I'll turn it over to you, Steve, whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Hey, Adam, before we do that, there's a couple specific questions about RADA inside of DealStats in the chat. I'm going to take a look at those. A couple of them are just general information, but I think they're good to share.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these. So one, we have a question where someone is asking, does RADA look outside of the content? Is it looking outside of this PDF? Is it looking outside of DealStats? Is it looking outside of BVResearch Pro to provide us with responses and information? And the answer is no. It's a contained system. So the benefit of using RADA and BVResearch Pro or using RADA and DealStats is it's not using outside sources. It's not using outside content. It has guardrails on it, so it's only looking at the source that you're querying. So that's a good question. But yes, it doesn't look at outside information outside of what you're analyzing. So we have a question here. How do you spot check or check the data in the HVAC chart? So you can go through in DealStats and apply any filters to recreate what RADA has provided you with. So you can go through and specify that SIC code. You can specify that sales date range. You can specify private targets, anything else that you've asked RADA for, and you can look at the statistics page and you can verify any of the information for any of those years if you want to see the median SDE multiple or anything else. So outside of that SQL query or the logic it employed in auditing that, you can run those searches manually in the DealStats platform. And the one thing that is a benefit to RADA is that you can produce this data and these summaries over a time period by year, as opposed to individual searches to produce each year, but you can still do so to corroborate that. And something that's coming to DealStats, which isn't currently available now, is the ability to actually impose any of your transactions, any of your, filter criteria directly from RADA into the platform. So what we did there with looking at those HVAC firms or that time period, we could specify criteria and have that take place in the DealStats platform, as opposed to manually going back and trying to recreate those filters in the platform. So that is something that's, in the pipeline, is something that we're working on. All right, I'll look at a couple of these other questions, but Steve, first, I'll turn it over to you if you want to walk through BVResearch Pro.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
Thanks, Adam.
Absolutely.
Just to give a little background, I'm like many of you that are on the call. I'm a practitioner. I've been using BVResource for years. Our firm is a traditional CPA firm. We do tax work. We do audit work. From a valuation perspective, I probably do 25 to 30 valuations a year. And, like I said a second ago, I've been using BVR products for, 15 years plus or something like that. But prior to RADA, and one of the reasons I even got involved in the seminar was our webinar, is that, I had mentioned to our rep that I really, really liked the addition of RADA on top of the BVResearch Pro that I was already using. And prior to RADA, what I used to do was, probably like many of you, that if you use BVResearch Pro, is that I would literally, if I was working on a new valuation, and like, let's say it was a landscaping company, I would go out and try to search for any content I could find, whether that was a guide that was specifically on the industry, or if it was an article that was in BV Update, or if it was a case. I think back then, I don't recall if case law was part of BVResearch, but I think it is now. But it would give me case law, like if I had a litigation matter. And the beauty of RADA now, having RADA on top of that, is that I don't typically go to that search bar first. I almost always go to RADA, and I'm going to do a demo here in a second, but I'll go to RADA first, just because it's going to specifically answer my question, and it's going to give me all those resources. And probably the only time I don't use RADA is that, as geeky as this sounds, a lot of times I'll use BVResearch Pro. If there's an area that I want to get more experience in or learn more about, I'll pull the webinar up. And even though I don't get CPE for it, I can at least listen to the webinar and see if there's anything specific about an industry that I haven't valued before, or if it's been a long, long time since I've valued a company in that industry. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. You see that, Adam?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Okay. So the first thing I do is I go to, here's basically everything that I subscribe to. And then I go to BVResearch Pro. And as you can see, what's on top of that is business valuation update, law, the digital library, and then the on-demand training. So obviously when I go in here and we use RADA, it's going to incorporate all of these resources. So I'm going to go ahead and get into here. There we go. So, like I mentioned earlier, historically, I would just go here and I would search for whatever I was looking for. But now, most of the time, I go to search with RADA, and it comes up with a prompt just like you would if you were using chat or any other AI search engine. And so I've prepared a few examples here. And one of the things I tried to do with these examples is to do some really rudimentary things just to show you how you can pretty much ask RADA anything related to BV, and you're going to get some kind of answer. So, I think it's important to know that you're not just using this tool for very specific, complicated business valuation issues. I mean, I was telling Adam that I typically, whenever I'm working on a valuation, no matter how simple or how difficult, I have RADA running in the background continuously. And then as I'm working through the valuation, sometimes, this profession is so subjective, and it relies on our professional judgment so much that, there's always those moments where you're second guessing yourself, or you want to verify the assumption you made or a decision you're trying to make. So anyway, the examples that I'm showing, I wanted to show you how wide the examples could be. So this first example that I'm going to give you is really kind of like not a BV question per se, but it's more of a technical issue on how you would do a certain calculation. So my first question is, I'm going to ask it, if I add a stub year to my DCF, can RADA please show me the Excel formula and how this is done, and please provide a detailed example. So we put that in here. And you can see this was not included in Adam's demonstration, but we can include case law. And obviously for this example, I'm not going to do that, but we could do that, which is very valuable. Again, if you're doing litigation, it's great to have, an example like that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the button there. That's a lot, right? So I think one of the examples or one of the things you can see right away that's a little bit different than when Adam was using it over DealStats is it gives you quite a bit of content, and you'll see that on any of these examples. And I don't know if we'll get through all the examples, but you can see as you go through here, one of the things I like about it is it gives you kind of a step-by-step of, first of all, it tells you, it basically says, it kind of recites exactly what you're wanting to do to clarify that. And then it comes through and it kind of walks you through exactly what you're trying to accomplish. And then it slowly gives you the formula. Like in this case, it's actually having you, and this is a little more complicated because I specifically said, we're asking for a DCF. So it's walking us through not only how to do the stub year, but it's also walking us through an example of the DCF, and it's giving us numeric numbers. But I asked for that. I said, give me a detailed example. So you could make this simpler if you want it. So anyway, we read through here and you can see that, it ends up giving us how to create that, fractional year. And this is even a little different than what I've done in the past. This is an actual inquiry I made because I was working on a DCF where I had a stub year. I used to have a template for it. For whatever reason, I couldn't find it. And I think before I just kind of used the math. I didn't use this year fraction. So anyway, a couple things that I do in addition to this is, once I run this, and again, this is a lot of information, but once I run it, if I wanted to clarify something, obviously I can just keep asking, RADA to clarify things more and more. One of the things that I never do with any of this stuff, I never just cut and paste any of this information into a report. I really use it. I kind of think of, AI is changing our business quite a bit. And one of the things that I really think AI is useful for is helping us, not only facilitate our answers, but also to make us better thinkers. And this bottom section here is really neat too. And I don't think this came up in the examples that Adam was showing, but it actually gives you additional prompts that are, quite frankly, pretty ingenious. Like as an example here, how to adjust the terminal value discount factor when I add the stub year to a 5-year DCF template. And you'll see this with any of these examples that I provide, that's the case. It's going to prompt you. As an example, we'll go through a couple of these and you'll see where we'll say, hey, can you give me an example how I can, frame up a report or report language. And again, you don't have to copy it exactly, but at least get you thinking about, how to do that. And much like what Adam was showing you, you can copy here. I had asked Adam this question before, and I don't think that's changed, but I know on some of the AI search engines, it will save your content. RADA does not save your content, right, Adam?
Yeah, it currently does not. We're actually working on that, and that's coming soon. So you'll have the option to save any of your chats in RADA here in the near future. So if you want to come back, you want to re-engage that conversation, pull it back up, ask any additional questions, that will be coming. So presently not here, but it's coming soon. Gotcha.
And so, much like the example that Adam gave, any sources that it has is, are typically shown, like right here. This information came from this particular resource, and you can just click on this resource, and it will bring up a sidebar where it got that, and then you can drill down into that. I'll click on it. There you go. So you click on that, you get a little sidebar. It gives you all the resources. You can click on it. Those typically will open up in a separate window. And coming down here to the bottom, this is what I normally do. So like, if I want to keep this content, one, to put it in my file, or two, just to spend a little more time going back to it as a reference guide, I will click this button right here, which is a copy function. And I will either, like if I'm on my iPad reading in the morning, and I'm looking at some of this stuff, I might just copy it into an email and send it to myself, or I'll copy it and drop it in a Word document if I'm sitting at my desktop. Here's another just example. Again, just kind of a wide range of different things you can do with it. In this particular example, I'm just asking it a real simple business valuation question. I know a lot of practitioners get this, misuse this language, and that's basically, I'm asking it to give me the difference between enterprise value and MVIC. For the most part, they're pretty much the same, but there is a difference. So I'm asking that question, especially if I see that in another practitioner's report. And again, we can include case law if we want to, but this is kind of a question we probably wouldn't do that. So I'm not going to click that box. And you notice in my inquiry too, I asked it to give me a side-by-side example. And again, I think it's one of the beauties of it. It's amazing, what you can ask and what it will actually deliver. Very much like, some of the examples that Adam was showing. So as you can see here, it starts out by giving us the definition and what that definition is. I mean, you can see here that INVIC's total invested capital, and then here it says basically enterprise value is INVIC less the cash. And then it comes down through here, gives us a side-by-side example. Kind of going back here again, we can, it prompts us for this information, but if we're still not clear, we can keep prompting it, which I've had to do many times. There's times when, especially in litigation, because in litigation, you can go as far as, putting, I don't normally put, and really, Adam, this is probably a question for you too. When we put information into the system, I'm assuming it's not shared with the outside world because we're not searching the web. But what I'll do, even in litigation, is I'll put the situation I have, especially like in a damages case or whatever, and see if my approach is reasonable, if it makes sense or not. Just to give me, sometimes, I come up with, or RADA will come up with some things I didn't think about or to consider. Again, it's one of those trust but verify kind of thing where I keep prompting just to make sure it's really clear on, what I'm asking. So that was an example of just that. But here's an example real quick. I know we're a little short on time here, but here's an example of, and this is an actual live example I used. You know how we are as practitioners. We carry example reports around with us for years. And I wasn't super happy with, the introduction and description of assignment paragraph within my report. So I asked RADA, I said, hey, what typically goes into in a damages report, the introduction, description of assignment section? And this is pretty much what I got. Again, this is a little different just because this isn't probably exactly what I asked. And while this is working, another thing that's really neat too is that you can even ask RADA to prepare you a checklist. So if you said, hey, prepare me a checklist for, a calculation engagement that complies with AICPA standards or NACFA standards, it will do that. And then you can take that checklist and it will ask you again some more very specific questions, or you yourself could, keep asking it to tailor it more and more. I have certainly done that as well. And then you can see here, these are just, I love this section because it really provides some really great feedback on what you're asking it. But again, I mean, it's kind of given us, like we look at this where I'm asking, hey, give me the introduction for, a damage report. It kind of walks through here, tells us what those elements should be, or at least what you should consider. And then it gives you a really nice paragraph right here that you could either use or you could edit for your specific use. Just, super helpful. Adam, are we good, or will we do one more?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do another example if you have some.
I'll do one here where this is kind of a good example too, more of a live example. I was valuing a really small business, and it's not. These are not the numbers, and this is not very specific, but it's kind of in the same realm. It's valuing a very, very small business, and pretty much it's one of those businesses where someone's working for a job or buying a job, basically, and as practitioners, we think evaluation is how would an investor look at a business, but it's a little confusing when you've got like a really small business and someone's just buying a job. So I asked RADA, I have this very, very small lawn care business with revenues of X, has no employees, has business expenses of X, leaves a profit of Y. And then I basically asked it, hey, what's the best way to value this company? Is using an SD multiple the best way? But how can I validate that with the income approach? And one of the reasons I asked that, because, like if you take a really small business like this, that, if you were to try to like normalize officers' comp, you're probably going to end up with a zero value, which is not realistic. So the answer, again, this is not exactly my situation, but it's very similar. But I really liked the answer it gave me. It pretty much, in summary, pretty much what it told me was that, small businesses like this transact at an SDE multiple. And it told me that, one way to really look at this is to kind of bifurcate, take your SDE result, but then in most cases, the owner's comp of that is probably somewhere between 50 and 75%. And usually the risk is really high. So your discount rate or cap rate would be pretty high. And it, pretty much went through and showed me how to do that. So again, I thought that was a great example. And again, I can continue to ask questions about that. I'll do one more example, Adam. We got to 150, right? We're just a tad over.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I thought this was a good question too. This is an actual question that I asked it. Sometimes I do a fair amount of litigation, and often I find really good cases that I've often questioned. Should I cite a case in my report? And I have before. But again, I make it very clear that I'm not practicing law. I'm just using, and usually these are state specific too. Like, so I'm in Ohio, but I'm also neighboring Kentucky and Indiana. So, usually I'm looking for those cases. And when I do, I might make a reference to a case, but not from a legal standpoint, but mainly from just a pure business valuation perspective. And so I asked RADA, I said, hey, when preparing a damage report, is it common to cite specific case law? Please summarize as much as possible. So that's this last example I'm going to show you here. Now, I could include, and I will include, case law. Of course, in this example, though, too, I'm just saying, is it common to cite specific case law? This isn't a great prompt question because I didn't give it the jurisdiction. I wasn't super specific about what's going on in this damage report. I'm just trying to give you an example of how detailed you can get with some of these questions, or how broad you can get with some of these questions. And of course, right out of the gate, it says law is is counsel's job. Facts and methods are the expert's job. And then, I believe it goes on and tells us that, you can do it, but proceed with caution. And then let's see here. Anyway, as I showed before, it gives us a lot of additional things that we could ask it. So anyway, that's how I typically use it. Again, I've gotten so accustomed to it that, as I mentioned on the onset of this webinar, when I'm working on evaluation, which I was this morning before we did this, and I had RADA open the whole time. So that's typically, how I do it. Adam, back to you.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Steve. Those are some great examples. It's really helpful to see those. I know we're over time. I'm just going to answer a couple really quick questions, and then we will turn it back over to Amanda to close us out. We do have a comment here. It says RADA is also great at identifying cases that deal with a specific valuation issue. That's great. Thank you, Barry. We had a question back during DealStats about whether RADA and DealStats can do ROI analysis. Yes, it can. I haven't done it personally, but I asked RADA, and RADA says it can. So I'd say give it a shot. We also have a question. This came back during the DealStats section as well. So if you have RADA and you have those multiples, so I think we have the data table pulled up. What if you want to get more information about those underlying actual transactions? So again, that's something where you can ask RADA, ask it to clarify, ask for specific details, ask those follow-up questions, and RADA will provide those answers to you. And shortly, RADA will be able to impose that search criteria in the platform itself for you to review those deals. Here, really fast, if you want to learn more about RADA, visit BVResources.com/RADA. And let's see here. Quickly, what's next? Like we talked about, the ability to save prompts in conversations. Expect to see this towards the end of June or early third quarter of this year. Also, like we talked about, the ability to use RADA to identify comps and deal stats. That's coming this year as well. We're also bringing RADA to our other products and our other offerings and our other tools. So expect to be able to interact with RADA in different areas in different ways in the near future, later this year and early next. And then also expect a single connection to everything you subscribe to. So right now we're looking at RADA and DealStats. We're looking at RADA and BVResearch Pro. We looked at RADA and the Economic Outlook Update. Expect a system that, in addition to those individual product RADAs, a system where you can interact with everything you subscribe to and pull in content, data, resources, intelligence across all of your subscriptions in one place. And that's slated for 2027 as well. So I will turn it over to Amanda now to close us out.
Great. I'll take it from here. On behalf of BVR, I want to thank Adam and Steve for joining us and for sharing their expertise and uses of RADA. As a reminder, to receive CE credit, you must complete and submit a brief survey on this webinar. This page will automatically redirect you to that survey when I finish speaking, so don't disconnect. You can also find the survey link on the web page for this webinar. The survey will be active for 5 days and must be completed before we can process certificates. After 5 business days, we'll process your CE and send your certificates via email. You can also now access them on your individual MyBVR account. If you have any questions or suggestions regarding our webinar programming, please email me at training@bvresources.com. And coming up for more BVR webinars, on May 19th, we have a dive into the nuances of ESOP valuation report writing with Lori Lee White and Sam Macon. And on May 28th, we have Introduction to Calculating Economic Damages in Construction Claims Litigation with Dan Bash and Tucker Deslin. You can find additional offerings on our calendar page as well under live events. Thank you all for listening. Have a great rest of your day. We're going to end this webinar now, so please go ahead and fill out the survey.